Chris Sanders is one of many unsung heroes in the realm of animated filmmaking. Before becoming an auteur of his own, unveiling his breathtaking, family-friendly stories to the big screen, he was the head storyboard artist and character designer for all of your favorite movies made by the House of Mouse. Which ones? Well, maybe acclaimed instant classics such as The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin might help ring a bell. 4 years after being the story supervisor for Mulan, Sanders and fellow artist Dean DeBlois directed and wrote an underrated gem according to Disney fans that I haven't seen yet. Please don't crucify me. That is, of course, Lilo and Stitch, an animated project originally conceived by Sanders' unsuccessful book pitch about an extraterrestrial creature named Stitch back in 1981. Yeah, it was that long ago. Unfortunately, it would be the last animated Disney flick he would ever be a part of, as he requested his departure due to creative differences with the company, to which he took his visionary expertise to an equally competitive animation powerhouse, Dreamworks. In 2010, he reunited with Dean DeBlois to write and direct a loose adaptation of a popular children's book series, that being one of my favorite animated movies of all time, the original How to Train Your Dragon. As we sit here in 2024, it has been 11 years since he has directed an animated flick for Dreamworks, and at long last, Sanders, after scouring for a project to share to the movie-going public, was finally offered a shot to direct an adaptation of the best-selling, award-winning, middle-grade novel by Peter Brown, The Wild Robot, a science fiction survival tale about an assistant droid named Roz, who is plopped on a deserted island after a shipwreck as she figures out how to adapt to nature and communicate and befriend some of the animals in the wilderness, becoming one with the wild herself. Dreamworks is no stranger when it comes to adapting best-selling books into feature-length animated features. We've seen it in How to Train Your Dragon, The Bad Guys that came out years ago. Even in the late 90s, early 2000s, they made movies that were based off of stories from the Bible. As seen with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, Dreamworks still has it in them to unleash animated movie magic for families. And The Wild Robot is no exception. Honestly, I am shocked by how outstanding on nearly every conceivable level this movie is. The trailers honestly didn't impress me, and I speculated that it was going to be DreamWorks' answer to WALL-E. But I am happy to say that I was completely and utterly wrong. A lot of people, including critics, are calling it the best DreamWorks movie ever made. I mean, it's a little bit stretching it and maybe suffering from recency bias, especially considering that true masterworks such as How to Train Your Dragon 1 and 2 and Prince of Egypt exist. Nevertheless, Chris Sanders' latest work of animated fiction is among the most spectacular and euphoric animated movies in DreamWorks' catalog. Cards on the table, this is the best animated movie of the year. Unless Moana 2 can take home the prize, though at this point it kind of seems unlikely. Roz, aka Unit 7134, is an all-purpose robotic assistant, a part of Universal Dynamics, that crash lands on an island filled with all kinds of animals that aren't too welcoming of it, running away from it and describing it as the monster, some even going so far as to destroy it first chance they get. One night, after mischievous and even life-threatening encounters, she stumbles across a destroyed goose nest. Upon discovery that one egg survived the destruction, she keeps it until one day, a baby goose hatches. With Roz's new purpose of taking care of this young gosling, along with the aid of a sly red fox named Fink, the two try to help it accomplish 3 objectives as it grows older: learn how to eat, swim, and fly before winter migration. A common motif that I began to notice from Sanders' filmography and storytelling is that he has such a huge knack for forging animated narratives with themes about family, parenting, and belonging while being the outsider. They were story tropes that were executed remarkably in films like Lilo and Stitch, that I've heard, and most definitely in How to Train Your Dragon, and so on. In the case of The Wild Robot, how he goes about executing those subject matters and messages is by honing in on Roz's family dynamic with Bright Bill, her adoptive gosling, and Fink, who is basically just a wisecracking loner. Sanders and his writers take so much time to develop these characters, fleshing out their vulnerabilities, and having them transform into heroic, selfless versions of themselves. And it makes up for some powerful moments of emotional character growth, establishing the unlikely familial bond that they have for one another, to the point that their actions have an effect on the forest dwellers that surround them. Especially with Ross, who as a one-dimensional operates on command droid, grows more human and motherly towards protecting and taking care of Brightville, and some of that character growth builds up into what I think is one of the greatest sequences that Dreamworks has ever done in years. It's one of the strongest metaphors for parenting and acceptance that I have ever seen by Dreamworks. It's staggering. I mean, it's funny that I say that because when engaging with the source material, Sanders could have just gone the bromidic, Hollywoodized route of a cute, naive robot palling around with animals in this forest, in a feel-good script which culminates with a slapdash attempt to postulate that technology is bad and nature is good. Pretty much what I thought the trailers made it look like. But Chris Sanders is smart. He recognizes that children and adults are capable of comprehending grounded messages and story beats without being too mature or inappropriate for children. That's not to say that there isn't some dark elements to be had in The Wild Robot. This film doesn't shy away from, at times, punctuating how dangerous the wilderness is. There are scenes of dark humor in which animals get killed off screen, animals get eaten, I mean, heck, a bird gets its head bitten off for a brief moment. And there was a moment where Roz accidentally kills an animal, which eventually plays out into a very pivotal plot point. I've never expected something out of this from Dreamworks in a long, long time, but I gotta say, I admire the gumption that Sanders had to put those scenes like that in the movie, to balance that line of what kind of tone the film wants to present itself as without going too overboard. But I gotta give a big kudos to the vocal performances because they all do a magnificent job. The voice work can be unrecognizable as both Pedro Pascal and Mark Hamill act accordingly to their material, followed by fantastic direction by Sanders himself, which allows the two to make a grand effort of making their characters come alive. And the ones that are a bit or totally recognizable, say Catherine O'Hara, Ving Rhames, Matt Berry, even Prince Nibirius himself, Bill Nighy, and of course Lupita Nyong'o as Roz and Kit Connor as Brightville are just as terrific. And then there's the best aspect about this movie: the animation. Sanders described the animation in The Wild Robot to be a Monet painting in a Miyazaki forest. And just by watching the colorful display alone that you are witnessing in the clips and the trailers online, you can take him at his absolute word. Aside from the character models, especially with how detailed Roz's cybernetic design is and how fluid and smooth her movements are, the backgrounds and the environments all have a hand-painted aesthetic to them. All you have to do is look up at the sky to witness your first example. And by that I don't mean the actual sky, just the sky that I'm about to show you on the screen. From the pinkish red sunset to the bright moon at night to the overcast clouds at day, it is an artistic thing of beauty. This applies as well to the animation that was found in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish for all of the animals, mixing photorealistic CG imagery with 2D cartoon drawings and watercolor effects. However, as inspired as it is by Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, a large amount of the influence is due to the filmmakers being inspired by the masterworks of Disney's golden age, such as Pinocchio and Bambi. The amount of dedication, crafting, and breathing life into nearly every frame of the movie just goes to show you how committed every single designer is when making this beautiful, majestic picture. And I also never expected to say something like this when talking about this film, but Chris Bauer's score is simply spectacular. The powerful percussion, the triumphant woodwinds, and with the touch of technological tunes inserted throughout, make it one of the best scores of the year. There's a particular orchestral song that is played during one of the greatest scenes in the entire film called I Could Use a Boost. I swear, it is one of the best pieces of music from Dreamworks since Test Drive and How to Train Your Dragon. It'll be played in cinematic and YouTube montages throughout time. You mark my words. But there is a part of me that has to push the brakes. If there's one misstep that I have with the Wild Robot, it has to do with the film introducing in the last act of the film this character that the film supposedly touts as the main antagonist. For as authentic and neutral as everything in the story felt, given the morally gray nature from both the island and Roz's futuristic corporation, the weakest part is when we get this obviously stereotypically evil robot who is played by Stephanie Sue, who for the record is also great in this, and her robot troopers are thrusted into the narrative just so we can have a climactic showdown between nature and technology. I understand the cause and effect of it all, but it would have been much more better had it kept that authenticity going, where nothing is presented as, I don't know, blatantly villainous. As I've said before on Twitter, best animated feature is the Wild Robots to lose. It is extraordinary that Sanders would take more than a decade to return back to his animated directing prowess, and somehow, some way, he managed to concoct something like this. A true marvel in almost every sense of the word, packaged with incredible character depth and storytelling, brilliant execution of its themes, and some of the most awing animation of DreamWorks' legacy. And with it standing head and neck above all as the best animated movie of the year so far, it is my great honor to say that DreamWorks' latest flick soars to great heights. Your move, Disney. See you in November. My name is Luke Nukem, and you, my friends, have been blown away.